If you've been listening to the show for the past 6 months, you've been hearing me talk about a personal project I'm doing that I was going to launch on Kickstarter called the Drifting Moon Tarot. It's a tarot deck and it is live on Kickstarter right now. It is currently up and I just wanted to make that announcement. A tarot deck is a deck of cards that each card has a different theme. And my job as an illustrator was to figure out the stories and the symbols and the meanings behind these cards and the different themes. And so it was a really fun, almost like a narrative kind of project, but applying it to a deck of cards. And so I'd love for you guys to go check those out on Kickstarter. We do have a link in the show notes here on this episode. And you could also go to Kickstarter and just look up Drifting Moon Tarot. As you know, us here at 3 Point Perspective, we are very big on artists making projects that they are passionate about. And the only way these projects work is if you guys support them. We love the idea of taking a little bit of power away from the big companies and giving it back to the artists. And that's what these things are. That's what this project is for me. I took the last 6 months off of commercial work just to do this project. And so I would love to ask for your support and your help. And if you like the project, share it around. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Will Terry.
And Lee White couldn't join us today. He is on assignment, but Will and I are interviewing Michael C. Clements. And this was a fascinating interview, and it wasn't an interview I would have thought to have sought out. He actually sought us out, and when I learned a little bit more about him, I was like, "Yeah, this would be an interesting guy to talk to and have on." What were some of your big takeaways from this interview, Will?
I mean, I love the whole thing, but I love how he talked about just being able to just do so many different things in the creative field. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I asked about it, but I mean, the idea of just deciding that you can edit, deciding that you can write, that you can act, that you can illustrate. And it's something that I've been trying to teach my students to combine. It seems like the artists that make the most money are the ones that are able to combine at least two things into a product, two of those two different areas of creativity into making a product. And
I'm realizing now that we haven't really explained who he is or what he does. So our listeners are just like, okay, who is this? So he 10 years ago started a thing called ArtJamz, which is it has shifted from being a studio that you go in and you hang out with people and you paint something for an evening or a couple hours and you drink and you have music and you just hang out, or you can have a party, or you can have a company, team building activity there at the studio. And he had 3 of these studios. They all got shut down because of COVID. And so he transitioned into having it be an online thing. He developed a really unique package to send the art supplies out. People got a virtual course with an artist. Now they actually he calls artists and who live in particular areas to go and do these live, because they're starting to do them live in different cities. But it's just a way for him to spread creativity, as he says it. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is he talks about how important a mission, having a mission, is. But the neat thing is this is act 4 in his life, or act 5 in his life. Act 1, growing up. Act 2, you leave your home and you go start your life. He goes to China for a few years. He becomes an editor of a major magazine in Washington, D.C. He, in between that, lives in Japan and Maui. He goes to L.A. and becomes an actor. He joins a band, and I think Japan was where the band was, right? Mm-hmm. I think something like that. So this guy just has had, he's almost like a Forrest Gump, a creative Forrest Gump, I feel where he's just been through everything, and he's putting all of that, all throughout this time, he's writing poetry, he's doing photography, and he's illustrating. So he's got this creative streak in him, and he's putting all this experience into not just his company ArtJamz, but also into his own work, and putting together a book to put that out and get a runway going for his illustration career, which was really interesting. So one of my main takeaways though, and if you pull anything from this, it's that failure as practice for success is sort of my takeaway from him. Like every time he's in a tough pinch, like a real pickle, like how am I going to get out of this thing? He pivots and he turns that into some sort of success. And he just does that time after time after time. And I think it's a real lesson for us as creative types, illustrators, things like that, on how to succeed and thrive in like a pretty much a chaotic career field and world that we live in. So
yeah, I really hope that it opens minds of some of our listeners to possibilities that they might have in their life, things that they give them ideas of things that they might try as they are on their artistic journey and their creative path through life. I never saw myself exactly doing what I'm doing, working with you and Lee, and I love it. And it wouldn't have come from the beginning to just say, I'm gonna start an art school, be an illustrator, and have a podcast and a YouTube channel and all that. Every single thing kind of happened organically. And I think every artist has that potential, many potential paths that they can go through, but it comes through discovery and it comes through being in motion. I wanted to ask him about how many hours he's spent in his life playing video games. I would predict that he wasn't a big video game player.
No.
And I love video games. I just think that a lot of us allow too much time to be spent there and not enough time creating and doing the work.
Yeah. Really interesting. All right, let's go to the interview. We are excited to have you here. I was first made aware of you from actually, I believe it was an assistant of yours or a partner or something reached out and just said, "Hey, check out this guy. Look what he's doing." And see if he'd be, interesting for your podcast. And when I dug in a little bit and looked at what's going on there, I was fascinated. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us, where you're from, what you're doing here, and let's dive into it.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the space and the time, and I'm really excited to speak with both of you. And, you said you're not a professional podcaster. I'm not a professional illustrator, but yet a lot of what I've done has intersected with illustration. And just like you're doing podcasts and I've done illustration. So I hope that's okay. I would consider myself an autodidact, multidisciplinary artist. And I'm a business owner with ArtJamz. We started 11 years ago. It's kind of like a paint and sip business. Before paint and sip was paint and sip, I consider us kind of like the Galapagos Islands of paint and sip. So we sort of developed outside of even knowing what paint and sip was. So we developed our own species of paint and sip. And I also have a company called Genki Media, which I focus all of my personal art projects, books, illustrations, artwork, and music, acting, screenplay development, those types of things I'll do through Genki Media. So I sort of do left brain, right brain, where I am a creative and attempt to make a living off my creativity, this sort of multidisciplinary fields, but then also run an arts business. Within that arts business, I don't do a lot of creative things. I do a lot of like running business type of things, right? And QuickBooks and, staffing and keep things organized and a lot of strategy and all of that. So kind of like that left brain, right brain, which I find a lot of creatives are. And that's, the blessing
I call it
and the curse. The blessing and the curse of being creative.
Exactly. No, I call it the Batman Bruce Wayne duality, where you want to be out fighting crime all the time, but you also have to run Wayne Enterprises and pay for the the fuel for the Batmobile and all the little bat wings and stuff. So
Yeah, that stuff gets expensive, right?
It does.
And the personal butler, like that can't be cheap either, you know.
No, it can't. It can't.
And eventually, you might even find yourself cleaning a toilet.
Yeah, I did that for many years when we had retail. I had 3 retail locations, and you know, like one of the things I would try to use as motivation, and it's like, this is the year that you don't have to clean a toilet. How do you make that happen? Like on the list of all of the goals, right?
Yeah.
Like there's all these books that are, you know, like, what's success? What's entrepreneurship? How do you gauge success? You know, it's like not having to clean a toilet.
Right.
Profitability is important too, obviously.
Right. But when you can make that leap to you're not cleaning the toilets yourself, like that's a huge step. So I wanted to ask you, like, going way back, you're graduating high school, you're going into college. At that point in time, like, what are you thinking life is going to be like, career is going to be like? What were you wanting to do?
Yeah, just completely oblivious to the future. I think at that point, you know, hindsight is 2020, so it's easy for me to look back at that stage and understand who I was, and who I am now, and understand that there was this person, this creative being in me, within me. And I'll even take it back farther, because I really believe, and I kind of would love to hear your thoughts on this, that the thing you do as a child is the thing that you should be doing as an adult. I did these like fake magazines and cartoon books, and I would take the paper and the little twist ties and make the magazines and do, you know, like cartoon characters or superhero characters or sports characters. So I was already drawing and like doing all of this stuff innately, organically. But it really took me until I was probably 30 to make a living out of that, because there were no real constructs around me that said, hey, this could actually be, well, first of all, you're creative, and that's actually a profession, right?
Yeah.
And so that's,
Yeah, I think.
yeah. Did you find that? What did you guys do when you were a kid? And is it related to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that you, as a child, so many of us are creative. I mean, almost everyone has a creative side.
Yeah.
And we, in society, in the way that we school children, we almost kind of break them of that. You know, we don't reward the mistakes, and we only look for certain skills. I mean, for when I was going to school, I remember thinking my talents aren't valuable.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wasn't good at English and math. And so when I hear you saying that you, as a child, really wanted to create, that was me. I think that probably resonates with a lot of our listeners.
I think so too, but I'm also looking at, I mean, comparing, 70s and 80s elementary school education to 2020s elementary school education is like such a stark difference, because I'm in Arizona, and the way that the school system is here is essentially there are 100 different charter schools, all catering to specific things like science, arts, even like music and choir. And essentially here in Arizona, if your child is interested in that and they want to go to one of these schools, the state money follows them wherever they go. And it's a really unique, I think, setup. I was in Utah prior to this, and Connecticut prior to that with kids, and there wasn't just this kind of opportunity here. So I think society as a whole is recognizing that that there is value to more than just, can you show up on time, complete a task, and then, go home, complete some more tasks while you're at home, and then show up the next day. And that there is like room for some creative thinking and things like that. So, but I'm not like a professional in the education sphere. I don't even have a college degree, so I'm not one to talk. This is just my observation. But one thing that I think is important, going back to your thing, is like what you do as a kid, what you're interested in. It does, like, if you can follow that thread and see where your interests and overlaps with ability, then I think you're gold. Like, then I think you have something. So you're going back to you, like, you're this business owner / artist, but leading up to that, was there just like this aha moment, like, I really want to dive in deep to this art creative thing? And what was it that like shifted you into that? Prior to that, were you, I mean, reading your bio, you were doing all kinds of different things. Like, was it just a matter of like you're searching and something clicked, or was everything clicking and it was like, I'm done with this, now it's time to do the next thing? I'm just curious, like, how that path went.
It took just like a really long time of trial and error. And, William, you had said that okay, so you knew that you were creative. I actually didn't know that I was creative yet. I was doing creative things. But it wasn't, so there's not an aha moment. I mean, I do think that I could probably pinpoint a couple of like multiple aha moments. I think it's like the combining of this creativity, that this is who you are. Okay. You are a creative being. And then aligning your income with that. And that process took a very, very long time. And it took probably it took a line in the sand when I was 30, really. And I said, okay, I'm not happy. And I had to realize what the root of that unhappiness was. The root of that unhappiness was I was following the path of sort of the structures that, you mentioned the 80s, like going to school in the 80s and 90s. So it was like science and math. I actually wanted to be a pediatrician, because I felt like that's because like medicine's a job, right? Or as like a lawyer, doctor, lawyer, business, not even an entrepreneur, right? So I had to first see why was I frustrated? And I realized that even though I've been doing all these things, whether it's like writing scripts and like a lot of acting and drawing and like poetry and all of this stuff that I've just been doing organically and innately, that until I made that my living, I wasn't going to be happy. At least that's kind of what I came to, right? But I realize now that most 20-year-olds are just frustrated anyway. So was I,
Right.
But so I kind of drew this line in the sand. I said, okay, from this day forward, no matter what you do, it has to be a creative job. And that's it. Whether you're writing, you're acting, or, list the creative things, right? The creative economy, that just, you need to figure out how to do one of those things. And one of the first things, I actually kind of booked this one-way ticket to China to teach this English class. And I wound up just staying there. And wound up living in Hong Kong for 3.5 years. And while I was there, I got a job as a managing editor for a publishing company and started to make a living as a writer and editor. That was kind of like the first thing that clicked for me, was that, okay, my writing, people pay me for writing. I sold a travel article while I was overseas because I needed money. I was like pretty broke. And I'm like, well, okay, what do I'm kind of doing these, seeing places, maybe I'll write a travel article on spec and start pitching it to some like magazines in Shanghai where I was. And I sold it. Actually sold the same article to like 3 different publications, which is totally wrong. I wound up being an editor of a magazine for 15 years, right? And being editor-in-chief of Capital File magazine here in DC. And which goes all the way back to childhood, right? I was like kind of making these fake magazines. So this decision when I was 30 to basically draw a line in the sand and say, okay, no more of these other jobs. If you're gonna be, I don't know, living in your parents' basement or something, or homeless. I didn't want to be homeless or anything like that. But you have to make a leap. You have to make this choice and say, from this day on, it'll be a creativity. I didn't know what that creativity would be, right? So getting this job in Hong Kong as an editor, kind of like, then I was able to come back to the States and spin that into, this magazine editor career that I had for 15 years. And that was pretty exciting. And while I was doing that, I started to explore my creativity a little bit more. While we would have features, and I'm like, hey, this would be a great spot for like an illustration, right? Like we're doing this issue, maybe it's the startup issue or the tech issue or something like that. And I'm like, okay, this feature well would be really cool if there was like this board game, almost like the game of life. I don't know if you guys remember that board game, but sort of make each piece like the startup. It's like you got an idea and then you get funding and your burn rate is going, so go back to start or something, kind of come up with these. And that's when I really started to kind of think about illustration in a professional sense, because my illustrations up to that point were just doodles in a notebook. Right. And the artwork, it was, before smartphones. So for me, processing the world around me, I did through journaling and through drawing and through doodling and through creating art. And, fast forward to kind of what I'm working on now, aside from ArtJamz, is I've taken all of those doodles and all those drawings and all the poetry from my notebooks and the journals and everything, and the photos and even the ticket stubs during those, and I put them into a book, which I'm just finishing right now, called Gen Exiled, Dispatches from an Analog Age, Poetry, Photos, Art, Illustrations, and Life Lessons, from the grungy 90s. So it all comes kind of full circle. And one of the things in terms of illustration is I realized I've just been doing this anyway, right? Organically. And and then sort of started to weave it into the jobs that I had gotten, as a magazine editor. And
yeah, that's fascinating. So just for context, you so you're a 90s, college age in the 90s, which means that point in which you decided I'm going to be creative is like the mid 2000s, I assume, right?
Right at 2000, it sort of coincided with the the turn of the new century and new beginnings and turn the page. So
so you sort of so that's a great time to like make that decision, because you can leverage all this interconnectivity between people online to gain exposure, but also for you to gain more community, I think, around your work. I don't know. How would you say the internet, going from like an analog 90s type of guy to this new age of creativity compounded with the internet, how did that like affect your career path, I would say?
Well, it made job searching a lot easier. So, the jobs that I got in Hong Kong, I got because I went to some business place and you could use their computers, to look for a job. So I think immediately that was it. But it's still before smartphones, and I really think that was the key, from the creative. I know. So there's this analogy that I use because it's really hard to pinpoint, especially when you're this multidisciplinary artist. And I think about a soundboard. You go in to a sound studio and there's like 30 channels. There's like all these buttons and everything. For me, my progress was more for like getting rid of the what if, like taking all of these avenues down to a point where at least I've tried them and I got rid of the what if. And all of these experiences. So if each experience is sort of one channel on the soundboard, yet the fullest sound is going to happen once all 30 of these are moved forward. That takes time and it takes experimentation. And after Hong Kong, I moved to LA and was an actor in LA for a year and a half, 2 years, and figured out I didn't really like acting in LA. Well, the only way I figured that out is because I went and did it, right? So, and I think with some people, they kind of know a little bit more what they want when they're younger, or maybe the field that they're in. So all they need to do is really maybe push up 1 or 2 knobs, right? But when you're doing all these experiences, like, okay, I'll do this for like a year or 2. I push that knob, and then there's this knob, and then it's like, then you leave that knob maybe for like 5-10 years. You don't even touch that knob, right? But now you circle back to it, but the fullest, richest sound is when all of these channels are moved up. So I think that more is like an overriding principle of how I've approached life as a creative, and each experience you can make lemonade out of lemons, right? Even if maybe that experience I didn't become like a famous actor in LA or something, but I learned a lot there while I was there that I've taken with me now and with the projects that I work on in TV, right? And as a creative, thinking about just moving forward, trying different experiences, because they all start to blend in and inform and create a fuller, richer sound.
I've had a number of students over the years, both in university and then students that I've met online, and a lot of them, a lot of people in general, to me, seem that they don't give themselves permission to do things unless they have a degree, right? So until someone tells me now I'm ready to go after this thing, I can't possibly be an editor, an actor, an illustrator, an entrepreneur. And how did you ever have that? I mean, what would be your advice to someone who is waiting to become a thing? People.
Yeah, I mean, I still have that. It's called imposter syndrome. I even had that before this call. I said, hey, these guys are professional illustrators. I'm not a professional illustrator. I've illustrated. What am I going to talk about? So I think that you need to try things. You need to keep moving forward. That's really it. You need to not be driven by fear. And I think it's how you approach those experiences. If you know going in, if you can make it a lose-lose, or you can make it a win-win. And I think the more you go and try these experiences, whether it's like, hey, I lived in Japan for 3.5 years after graduate school, right? And during that time, I played in a band. We wrote original music. It's like check that off the list, right? And you have to try that. And the problem is that takes time, and it takes some patience with understanding that it takes time, and you can't fast forward your life, unlike the Adam Sandler movie. But nor do I want to, but while you're sort of waiting for it all to kind of come together and click, it can be frustrating, but you just need to keep moving forward. That's what I would say, and understand kind of the magic of serendipity as well. And because the longer you stick with it, the more the pieces, you understand how all the pieces fit together. You didn't know that at the beginning, but now once those 5 dots sort of fell into place, you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, I didn't know that, but because you did at that first time, that first dot, like a really specific example, when I was in Hong Kong, I was there to become an artist and creative, and I had this magazine job, and then I was like doing television and film, and I like had art exhibitions with a lot of the sketches and art that I just drew organically. But 10 years later, when I'm in Washington, D.C. as this magazine editor, and I've spent years now, 6-7 years as a magazine editor interviewing all these incredible people, and I'm like, I want to do something now. I want my own business. Like, I felt like super motivated, but and I'd never had my own business. And so I'm like, well, I need an idea, right? Like, how do you do this? How do you start? And I remembered something that I did in Hong Kong in 2000, right? And which was going to this art gallery that this lady had. And on the second floor, she would let people come in and paint and have some wine. And she called it art jamming, right? And so now here I am 11 years later, 10, 11 years later, looking for this business idea, kind of going through my mental, I'm going to use the word Rolodex. I know you guys know what that means, but anyone that's, doesn't, my mental, Google Drive folder of ideas. It happened to coincide with the fact that I was in my attic painting with one or two other people at that time. And I was like, wow, this is really fun. We're like listening to music. We're like having some wine and we're like painting. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if there was a place like this in DC? And if that's probably the closest thing to the aha moment was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I did that thing in Hong Kong. She had a place and people came and I enjoyed it and I paid for it. Maybe we can do that here in DC. Right. But, in 2000, I didn't go to Hong Kong to like discover a paint and sip idea that I might have in 11 years. Right. It wasn't even on my radar. So how do you explain that in a book or in a creative life? You explain it by just move forward. It's like billiards. You can't play billiards if you don't hit the ball, and spray the balls. It's not, you don't knock them all in the pockets on the first shot. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's like, you got to mix it up. You got to take that first shot because it actually might be 5-6 points down the line that it all comes together. And you're like, okay, now I get it. I understand. But you have to make those movements. And there's a couple things that you can do as a creative to, let's say, improve the percentage of your success in those steps, right? The first is you got to put in the work, right? Like, it doesn't happen if you're just kind of sitting on the sofa and hoping that it comes to you, right? And when I was looking for a business idea, like, I never went to business school or anything like that. So I have a master's at American University in DC. I realized that you could do audits of their MBA classes, second year MBA classes for free, right? So I'm a big proponent of, you don't look externally for things to help you, right? I mean, okay, maybe that came off the wrong way. You can look first internally, the things that you already have at your disposal to take advantage of, to take control. You don't have to sit around and wait for, like something to just happen to you, right? So in this case, I realized, okay, I have this master's degree and you can go and audit this class. So I'll go do that, right? And that helped me with that foundation of creating the business with all those, SWOT analysis and P&L and all those things I never knew. Same thing when I went to Asia, right? Like, okay, I want to be creative. What do I do? I don't know. I'm just going to write a travel article on spec and I'm going to go knock on some doors of magazines, the magazine that I saw in the coffee shop, right? Where's the address to this? That's literally what I did. It was like Time Out Shanghai or something, right? And I saw the address and I walked over with like a printed out article of and I was like, hey, can I, this is an article of this place that I went to, and the editor was there. He's like, okay. Like, I put in the work, I made it happen, right? And that's the other important thing. But
how do you push through the voice that says you're wasting your time, all this work is going to go for nothing?
Well, again, hindsight is 20/20, because that voice was very loud for a very long time. Now I realize that it's really up to you to decide if the experiences you have are useful or not. And if you look at everything, failure as practice for success. Failure is one of the most important lessons that you can learn. And you don't fail if you don't try. And you can then also wallow in the failure, which is really tough. And you'll be there as a creative. I was there for many years, especially in LA. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's just like a constant stream of like, you're too old, or you're too fat, or you're not talented enough, or, no, over and over again. And it just crushes your psyche, right? But it can also make you stronger. It can also push you to want to be better, or to make you realize, hey, this wasn't the path for me. I saw it, but you never lose those lessons. They become part of you, just like your DNA, within you, the generations of the DNA that we have in us. my son has my DNA and all the DNA for the thousands of generations or whatever, before him, before me. It's the same with your experiences. So I think that's how you get through those, is that you soldier through them in a way, but then also realize that no matter the outcome, this is an experience that you can use to improve or to do something else, right? So it's really up to you how you use those. You can make, like I said, you can make lemonade out of lemons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ArtJamz started out as a brick and mortar place. Come in. It's like a real like an in-person experience. I don't want to say a real experience, but an in-person experience. Yeah. Tell us about ArtJamz journey from what year did you open that first, the first shop or whatever, and
studio
to now studio. Yeah,
man, crazy journey. So just the first 2 years as a side gig, as a roving pop-up party. And again, so that idea in the attic with painting with my friends, probably a month later, I got a gallery space, just using some of the relationships that I had built over the 6 years as, executive editor of this fancy luxury lifestyle magazine called Washington Life that was like connected to everything and everybody in DC, right? I was able to I knew where I could go and get a gallery space and rent it out, and got some canvas, and then, leverage some of the relationships that I had from food and beverage and sponsors, and got beers and DJs and stuff, and, got a weekend and put it on Eventbrite, and we sold it out. And then we did another one a couple months later, and another one. And after 2 years of that, it with kind of having all this stuff in my basement and packing it into my Jeep and moving it around, I was like, I'm getting tired of this. And it's also kind of going off. I think that this could be the time when I make the leap into entrepreneurship, into being my own boss, which there never is a great time for that. But so I just got married, and then I quit my job as the fancy executive editor of the magazine. And my wife was like, "What? Wait a minute! So you're quitting the really good magazine job where we get to go to all the parties with the tuxedos and like all of that to start a roving paint party business? Like, I wish you would have told me that before we got married." And I said, "Well, the reason why I didn't tell you is because I wanted to marry you, right? But now, until death do us part, baby." And like, so that was the first 2 years was a side gig. And I got a 1 year lease, kind of a clandestine meeting with a friend that had a space right in DuPont Circle, which is a nice area of DC. And it was kind of empty, and they were in between leases. And he was like, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this space. Why don't we do like a short term, like a 1 year type thing?" I was like, "Great, let's do it." Quit my job and then moved into this space. Now, I had never done anything retail. I don't even know what a POS was. Like, how do you pay people? Like, nothing, just leap and then learn to fly. So we then were in retail locations. That was an 8-year leap. And we wound up having 3 locations, physical retail locations in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, plus our mobile pop-up van, which we still have, and we still do these pop-ups. And
we're in Maryland.
So we currently have a studio in Lanham, which is in PG County.
I grew up in Beltsville.
Okay, yeah. So we're right there, and we did a lot of pop-ups in the area as well. So and then March 2020, COVID comes along. We shut all of our studios, closed them, and now we just pivot overnight to virtual art classes. And I invented this art box that we started shipping. And, here we are. We're still doing that. And I'm not actually going back to retail into the space. So, again, maybe it's because of the bathrooms. Could be going back to the toilets. So we moved into a warehouse. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like a WeWork for dropshippers. So there's a shared bathroom and a shared kitchen, and it's easy to kind of get things in and out there and to house our mobile van. The one thing I would say about this journey, obviously a lot of things happened during those 10 years. This is a very abridged version, but what I think the most important thing that that's enabled us to stay the course is to be mission focused. And as a creative, I think it's important for you to ask yourself, what is your mission? What is your higher purpose for what you're doing with your work? Besides, I'm creative and I want this to be my job. How can you attach what you're doing to a higher purpose, to a mission? When we started ArtJamz, our mission was and still is to make the world a more creative place. Big, mighty, high mission, right? But specifically, we do that two ways: provide jobs, good paying jobs, to artists to do what they do the best. That's art, and to teach people art, to have a job within their field. Secondly, to just get everyday people engaged in art. By doing that, my feeling is that they appreciate art more, and it's also really therapeutic. When people are creating, people are happy, right? They're in flow. We didn't invent the power of creativity, right? But we can get the horse to water, and once the horse drinks, they're like, wow, this this water's really good. I never knew I love this water so much, right? Like the secret sauce of ArtJamz is the power of creativity that's organically within us, that we reignite within people, like we talked about at the beginning, about society is to sort of put those barriers or taking you away from that. It doesn't mean that it's gone. Like the original thing that people did, what did we do? Like back in the day when we were living in caves, after we were out, hunting the woolly mammoths and getting those berries and hunting and gathering, we came back and we ate, and then we drew on the cave wall, right? That was like the original. It told stories. Yeah. And, because that's who we are as humans. So staying mission focused means that the channel through which you achieve your mission, we become agnostic of the channel. Yeah, it was a pop-up, and then it was a retail location, and then it was, now it's virtual classes. We're building a location in the metaverse right now. The medium is not the message, as Marshall McLuhan, so going back to my communications major, the message is your mission, right? And you can change your channel as long as you stay true to your mission. Your mission is your North Star. It will get you through the journey. And there will be rocks, and there will be storms, and there'll be sharks, and there will be, scurvy. I don't know what happens to people. No, when they're on, and, some people will jump ship and others will come. But if you stay true to that North Star, to your mission, you'll be fine.
I love it. So I want to know about what is an ArtJamz experience currently, what that's like. And actually, the box thing I think is brilliant. The pizza box thing, tell us a little bit about that.
So right now we do a lot of group and team building activities virtually. So it's like a 2-hour experience where we have an artist that will take a group through the process of creating a preset image, right? When we do our mobile pop-ups, we will do freestyle, which we actually started off freestyle. Again, like I said, it's like we're kind of the Galapagos Islands of paint and sip. Most people think of paint and sip. It's like there's a set image, and there's a teacher that's kind of like paint by numbers and takes you through that for the first 2 years.
Everybody's
2 or 3
doing
years.
Starry Night or something.
Yeah, or the lady with the umbrella in the rain or something. But we didn't do that because, again, I didn't know. The paint and sip wasn't there. Or maybe it was, but it was still kind of percolating kind of in the exurbs in Louisiana and in the South is sort of like where it came out of. But we started, how I loved painting was just you paint. Nobody tells you what to paint, because I'm like, well, can't painting and drinking be the one place that's left where nobody tells you what to do? You can just do whatever you want, right? It's like, that's what work is. I go to work all day and someone tells me to do this thing. Why would I want to, make by painting and drinking be task oriented as well? So for the first 3-4 years, it was just freestyle. We do freestyle sessions. It's like, I give you the paints, I give you the canvas, the wine and the beer and the music. And music is key, and you paint whatever you want. So so we also do that. I personally love that. That is like the best. But once paint and sip started to become popular, then we would get these requests from a lot of companies, corporate groups, consultants, lawyers, the Fortune 500 companies that want these team building activities, they were like, okay, well, we want to do the Starry Night image or the cherry blossoms by the Washington Monument or something. So we said yes. And so much of entrepreneurship is also when people come to the table and they're like, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah. And then I go with my team. It's like, how are we going to do this? Like this wasn't in the business plan, but we're flexible and we can pivot and we're going to do it. So we just got a request for it. One of the cool things about what happened with oh gosh, that's not cool. The pandemic was horrible for so many reasons, but again, how do you make the lemonade out of the lemons? And one was the art box. So once we started to do the virtual classes, like it wasn't an idea that I came up with. It was an idea because people started asking us to ship things. And I'm like, oh yeah, how do you do that? I don't know, I have all these materials. I guess I put them in boxes and I just ship them. And then after a couple months of that, I'm like, I need a better delivery device than just putting them like in a UPS box or a FedEx box. And so I was having pizza at the pandemic, and I told my wife, I was like, this is research. I'm just like eating a lot of pizza, and I was like, wow, this pizza box is actually kind of like a really cool delivery device. Like I think the 8x10 canvas would fit in here, and it's sturdy, so the paints aren't going to get squished and all of that. So I took an X-Acto knife and got these pizza knives, and I just started cutting up these pizza boxes. And one of the things that we started to get questions for once we were doing these virtual classes, and I was originally just doing doggy bags where people would just come to the studio and pick them up. Right? Because I had the inventory. Like we were shut down in the middle of peak season and we were totally inventoried up. Spring is big. So as a business owner, you think about inventory. So we're usually like have 1 month worth of art materials and canvas and wine and beer and all this stuff. But since it's the busy season, we're like 2 months. So it was like the perfect storm. It's like too much inventory. Then all of the private events that were booked paid deposits. So everyone's asking for their deposits back. So money's going out the door. No money is coming in the door because the door is closed, right? What do you do? I mean, this is like the perfect kind of like, if there were an MBA class, if they give you all these things now, your assignment is to figure out how to get out of this, right? So the way to get out of it is a lesson that I had learned through all of these trials and tribulations of trying different things is that use what you have already. Leverage what you have already. So I had all this inventory already, right? So I know it's like, well, I don't need to buy paint or canvas or anything for at least another 2 or 3 months. So I'm not going to be spending any money. What if I had, let's say, 50 private events booked over the next 2 months? What if I converted industry sales rate of like 30% of these converted 50 of these or 30% of these groups into our virtual experience and just be like, look, man, come on. I know that your team is all around and we want to stay in business and let's see if we're kind of figuring this out. Give us a chance, right? Let's do a virtual event together. I know you want to do an in-person event. You guys can't even get together anyway. So your team's all virtual. So we actually did that. We converted. So that kind of stopped the hemorrhage to the point where at least we were like not, it covered the loss of the deposits, right? So, and then I'm just like, we had these little bags that we had anyway, so people were just coming to the studio to pick them up. But then we had someone was like, well, our staff is actually all across the U.S., so ship. So I'm like, great, we'll ship. Then we started to have questions like, well, like none of these people have easels at home. These aren't, this is the accounting department,
right?
Right? Like no one has any of this stuff. So I started to think about that. In terms of, well, I need to send people easels. So while I was making this pizza box with the X-Acto knife, I was trying to do like a box within a box where the box that's within the pizza box is also a convertible easel, cardboard easel that pops up. And that's what we did. So I then figured out, I created a prototype and I'm like, there's got to be people out there that do custom boxes. So Google search. Yeah, there are, and sent this prototype to like 3 or 4 custom box makers. It literally still had cheese stains on it, and I would be like, hey, this is my prototype, sorry about the cheese stains, and I found a box maker. Most of them were like no, but there was like one where there was like an artist designer, like their CAD designer that's probably, making soda can displays, for Mountain Dew or something, right? And he was like, he or she, I think it was the guy, was like, oh yeah, this is like a really cool project. I love this. I totally want to take this on, right? Because he understood kind of what we were doing and the value of it, and helped kind of create a better prototype, because he was using CAD and has been doing this his whole life based on what I did. Then we had the art box and started drop shipping. And that whole pivot for us also did a couple other things, which I didn't realize would happen. Again, you don't know the dots, until they kind of come in, which it broke us out of the regional business. When you have physical retail spaces, then you're just dealing with people that can like kind of get to your space in DC, Virginia, Maryland area. Now we have customers all across the U.S. And then we started to get international. Well, a lot of these corporations that we're working with, they have team members in Europe and South America and in Asia, right? So I was like, wow, we went from being like a local brick and mortar, what now people would call paint and sip, to like a national and international business, creative business. And now we get a lot of requests for, hey, we want to do this in our Chicago office. And then I realized, wow, these art boxes are really kind of good this way too. I can just like ship 20 of these boxes to the office in Chicago, find an artist in Chicago, and then do the class there. And so then we started doing that. And then we had, some in New York and one in Chicago, right? Well, I realized, wow, there's literally artists in every city of the US. All I have to do is ship these boxes and I can get an artist there to teach it, which is a business model that we have never thought about, that we never ever did before. And that even while we pivoted, it wasn't the business model that I thought we would do, but that we've grown into. And now, we're doing an event in LA in March, which is really fun, where we did this event with a property developer during the pandemic, where they purchased boxes and classes for the residents since they were kind of locked in there. So we were able to kind of do all these events for the residents at their properties across the U.S. And they have this place opening in L.A. and they want to do this big mural in the wall there. And they're like, can you find an artist in L.A.? And I was like, sure. I mean, it was absolutely nothing like anything we've ever done before. There's no art boxes involved, right? But finding an artist to do this event in LA, to do this mural, and then kind of helping host an event with that. And that gives me an excuse to be able to also get out to LA in March to experience our first ArtJamz pop-up in LA. So I think it's about, how do you accept new information? How are you flexible? It's also learning to say no. I'm not saying that you have to say yes to everything, because we actually are saying no. We did a lot of kids parties when we had the retail business, right? And if you're a parent, then the birthday parties are typically, 10 to 15 kids from your class, and you have maybe the Chuck E. Cheese or there's a certain budget, maybe you're in that $500 budget or something like that. We were like totally packed for the paint and sip birthday parties. It was like a machine. We'd have them in the afternoon, and then the adults would come in the night. And since we also had a bar, all of our studios had a bar. It was 2 levels. So the parents would be upstairs kind of listening to music and having drinks, and we'd give them mimosas and stuff upstairs while the kids were downstairs painting, going crazy, right? And the parents were loving it. But now we just say no to all that, because we don't have that physical space. So it's hard to turn away that business. But also you need to kind of learn to say no and realize, okay, this is, what do we do and what can we do? And focus on what's most profitable. So
I just can't help but wonder how many entrepreneurs that were running your business in an alternate universe would have just folded during those setbacks.
That's true. Like
because it seems like you just look for, well, what's next? What do we do? How do we solve this problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're either a victim or you're not.
Yeah.
And you can choose kind of a victim mentality. And so, I mean, we have I had an advisory board and friends, entrepreneurs that are friends. And I would say the majority of them were like, hey, Michael, this is, no one, you can close your business during a pandemic. I mean, you're a high touch retail business, right? It's like the worst business to be in during a pandemic, being shut down. It's okay. Like, you can just close it up, do something else, another chapter. Like, this is the perfect, no one's going to get mad at you. Even if you go bankrupt, how many people got bankrupt like during the pandemic from their business? And so I would say I had very little, if any, I can't even support from anyone to tell me to pivot and to move forward. But I kind of looked at it and I said, all right, yeah, totally. This is an escape valve. I could escape out of retail and close the shop up. But what am I going to do? I mean, right? Like, I'm not a trust fund kid, so I need some, I need income. I need money, and I'm not going to get all the income off kind of like my illustrations and my poetry and my acting. Like, my other thing is kind of fun. And I do a lot. I mean, I definitely am all about multiple income streams and passive incremental revenue, right? Not just having all the eggs in one basket, but still, like, this was my baby. And this was the majority of my career. And I said, no, I'm gonna figure this out, because there isn't a silver bullet. It's not, the grass isn't always greener. Just because I close ArtJamz doesn't mean the next thing that I find or whatever is going to be better. Like, and plus, once you become an entrepreneur, and at this point, I've been living off, like, I've been making my living for a decade, right? Like, it's not a hobby, right? If your paycheck comes from a job, and you're not the owner, the entrepreneur, but you're still making money on the side off your creative, those are hobbies, right? The point where you decide that my income is coming from my business, not someone else's, then you've become, an entrepreneur. And I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, you're always an entrepreneur when you're doing things, but just like that's where the rubber meets the road. Level. That's where the rubber meets the road. Yeah.
Because you really can. I mean, if you're not totally reliant on it, for it to go away isn't a huge deal breaker for you. Like, all right, we'll just we'll just move on to something else. But like you're saying, like, you needed this to work, because what else is there? Right. Call it another magazine. I mean, except magazines aren't really a thing now, right?
Exactly. Like, the magazine was kind of. I mean, I didn't need it. I think it's. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that I would have found something and continue doing a lot of the other projects that I'm on. It was just that I preferred to stay with my business, and not only that, but I used that as fuel, that being people saying, it's okay, you can close this down, right? Or the odds of you figuring this out are not great at all. And I use that as fuel, almost like if you ever watch the Michael Jordan docuseries, like, he used like every tiny thing as motivation to push him.
Right.
And I think as an entrepreneur, I did that too. It's like, oh, you don't think I can make this work? And then that's what, my advisory board and friend is like, oh boy, here we go. I should have told them to do it,
Right.
You have to find these things to motivate you, definitely.
Do you think, though, like, what would it take? So illustration is still like on the fringe for you. What would it take for that? Do you want that to be eventually the thing, or and if so, what would it take? Or is it still good, like, this is an outlet? I'm doing ArtJamz. I'm doing, like, obviously that's filling some needs as well for you. But I'm just wondering where you're at with that and illustration.
Yeah. I'm almost at that point where I was when I was working a job for somebody else, right? Where I was like, it's time for me to have my own job, right? Or my own company, to be my own boss. Now that I've been my own boss, and, I'm also an artist, and I run a creative company, but when I'm in running my company, I'm not doing creative things per se. So I'm running a business. And when is the next leap for me to go full artist, where I'm actually making a living not off my artistic company, but the art itself that I'm generating. And so there's also a leap that needs to happen, just like there was a leap from going from publishing into, ArtJamz, and that leap is leaving ArtJamz and going in, money off my creativity. And that's why I'm working on this book, Gen Exile. And, but I've been working on that for 30 years, right? It wasn't a book first. It was just organic expression, and all those illustrations and the drawings and the artwork that I'm now sort of spinning into, I guess, a product. But as sometimes it has a bad connotation. But as an artist, you need material to sell. So I have all of this, and so I'm in that process right now. So I'm hoping that the book will kind of lead and open doors to become more of, full artists. We're making a living just off my creativity, and it's not just the illustrations in the book, but it's the poetry and the photography, and again, and the artwork as well.
Right. Stuff that could only come from you, right? From your unique perspective. Well, we probably should wrap it up, but I have a final question for you. You said you're a Gen Xer, obviously, and I'm looking forward to this. The Gen Exile, I think that's a cool name and interesting. What would you say is your most Gen X moment?
Oh my gosh! So definitely, without a doubt, while I was in grad school here at AU, Nirvana came and played at the basically the gym for AAU. The Breeders opened up for them. This is the last year. Yeah, it was a great concert. It was their last year, last concert. I think probably 4 or 5 months after that, we lost Kurt. So, and that I remember that concert and just being there. And by the end of the show, there were very few people there because they were just, I forgot which is the song. It's like this 20 minute song where they just start like switching instruments, and then there was like a big disco ball above the stage, and he was just like throwing his guitar up to hit the disco ball, and I was like literally just standing up by the stage, and there was like the mosh pit. I totally sprained my ankle really bad in the mosh pit, and but that was a very like Gen X moment for me that I'll always remember. And that part of what I have in my book as well is like scrap was like kept a lot of the ticket stubs, so it's like poetry, doodles, art, and ticket stubs. So I have that ticket stub on my kind of the intro page. It's definitely like proof, a Gen X moment. Yeah,
proof that you're there. A lot of people are saying too, just to go with that. I don't know if a lot of people, but I've been seeing this pop up online that the 90s were the last great decade, because that was pre-internet, and it was when it was like the culmination of pop culture being analog and be in person, and friendships being in person, and everything just being like, a physical, multi-sensual experience, and not just eyes and ears, right? Like the full thing. You could be at a Nirvana concert and smell the BO and the beer and
the teen spirit.
The teen spirit, right? That was good.
It was messy. Yeah,
that's a good one. But you could feel the vibrations. You could all the different senses. Where I feel like now, even though we're having this conversation, I can't it's just audio and visual, right? And all these other senses are sort of left on the table. And anyway,
I think that's where with the book, I wasn't intending to make a book. So during the pandemic, I had a lot of time on my hands, like as most people did. So I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll just go revisit some of these. Like in the year 2000, before I went to Hong Kong, I'd actually kind of taken all of these poems from my folders and stuff and transcribed them onto 50 floppy disks. So I had them on floppy disks, and not the real floppy ones, the harder ones, but they were still,
they were still floppy disks.
And I had created one copy. There's a place called Kinko's. I think I did it at Kinko's Copies, and I had one copy of this left. and the rest of it was on these floppy disks. And I took out this one copy and I started reading it, and I had the same feeling of everything that you just said. Like, wow, like I just wrote these to make sense of the world around me. These were not written to induce FOMO. These were not written for anyone else to see. It was just me processing the world around me, because I didn't have a phone in front of me. I didn't have anything. It's like you're sitting in a park. You didn't have a phone to take away your attention. I wrote a poem about, you know, sitting in a park, looking at the birds, you know, and in that instant, you know, this before 9/11, before smartphones, before this, you know, the pandemic and kind of this move to authoritarianism that the world is kind of moving into, and like all of these things, right? I felt that through the poetry, and I said, "There's something more to this. It's a snapshot of a time that's gone now, and that is an important time capsule almost that I want to get out and share." And it is almost like that time capsule of a different era of how we communicated with each other. Yeah. So,
That's
and it's
cool.
pretty hot right now. Chuck Klosterman has a new book out near, and I was kind of bummed at that. I don't know. His cover has. So I was trying to like, what's the most iconic kind of image you can think that just encapsulates the whole 80s, 90s pre-smartphone? And I remembered the phones with the long cords, and you kind of like have to bring the phone into the other room, and you kind of have a wrap around you, right? So I did a sketch, an illustration. So I did the custom illustrations for each of the chapter headers, and I did an illustration for the cover of this phone with a really long cord kind of coming out and wrapping. There's like a big X, Gen X on the cover, and it wraps around the leg of the X, and it just sort of lays there with this empty speech bubble coming out of it, like ... with that sort of like lost Gen X vibe. And I was like, yeah, that phone with the cord to me was like that iconic. And then I looked, it was like Chuck Klosterman's, cover is basically like that book, or the phone with the cord. And there's like a new Hulu series like Tommy and Pam, and they use this the font, the label maker font, for it. And I used that in my chapter headers. I was like, oh, I got to get this book out, because like the whole 90s thing is like totally blowing up right now, right?
Yeah.
So, but more importantly, I think it's because it is that last connection to the analog. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, so we go to artjamz.com. Is that where we go check out ArtJamz?
ArtJamz.co.
.co. Okay.
Yeah.
And when's your book come out?
That's a good question. So in design phase right now. So spring 2022.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else we need to check out?
You can check out my artist page, Not for Profit. That's KNOT4, Prophet as in prophecy, on Instagram. And it's art that predicts the future. We can talk about that next time. A lot of these illustrations that I did in the 80s and 90s are very prophetic. Some things that I drew in them have sort of come true. And maybe next time, if you have me back, we can talk about the connection of creativity and flow. And if you're just open-minded, using yourself as sort of a conduit into maybe something more unknown, and how art is a lot more complicated than I think people realize.
Wow. That's going to be another good hour-long conversation. So we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, it was great to meet you, Michael.
This is good.
I really appreciate it.
It's fun.
Guys.
It's for me. I love meeting artist entrepreneurs, because I think that so many artists don't realize that because they create the product, they have that thing that most of the guys that went to get the MBA want, which is a unique product to sell. And they already have it, and they don't realize how powerful they are. So
it is a golden age of creativity right now, with all the tools out there. It's an exciting time to be a creative.
it really
So
is.
for everyone out there that's listening, keep doing what you're doing, and keep creating, because the world needs more creativity more than ever. Absolutely. Thank you for what you guys do, and thank you for everyone that's out there pushing the envelope and bringing more creativity and creative joy into the world.
All right. So What'd you think of Michael? Well, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I love, I just love meeting entrepreneurs that are also artists.
Yeah.
And it's just cool.
Right. I think I liked the one thing you said there too. It's, and I don't know which, we ended up talking to him a bunch after the end of the recording, which it was funny. Like I almost wish, we could end the recording like in the first minute so everyone can just like chill and relax and then have the interview, right? Because sometimes the post interview recordings are there's some of the interesting stuff that happens there too. But anyways, one of the things you said there was the artist entrepreneur has like such a advantage over the entrepreneur looking for a product, because the artist has the product. They have a book or they have, something they've created. And then it's the act of like the business side of it. Like, there's, I don't want to say that's the easy part, but there's definitely a lot of entrepreneurs looking for a product. They know how to do the business, but they don't know how to do the creative art side of it.
Right.
So
they try to compete on price instead of uniqueness.
Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, I learned a lot from this guy. It's rare to like really meet someone who's done so much and who's tried so many things. Like the fact that he's lived in China, that he's been an actor, he's been, an editor.
We didn't even talk about Maui.
Right.
But yeah.
Anyway, so that was good. Well, let's wrap it up here. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And your hosts today have been Will Terry. I'm Jake Parker, and Lee White. Again, he couldn't join us, but you can find Will Terry at willterry.com and at willterryart on Instagram. Lee White, you can find at leewhiteillustration.com and at Lee White Illo on Instagram. And I'm Jake Parker at mrjakeparker.com and at Jake Parker on Instagram. Podcast is produced by Daniel 2. You can find him at danieltu.co. That's daniel2.co. Special thanks to Master of Production David Bro, Keeper of the Curriculum Austin Shirtliff, Chief Operations Officer Lisa Fott, and a thank you to Lily Howell for our show notes. Now, go draw something.
No, I think our listeners will be fascinated. I think a lot of them are trying to figure out where they fit in, and the real interesting thing to me about you is that, the question that I asked about, like, how do you push through the I don't have the piece of paper, therefore I am not. And I've had a lot of students like, when can I call myself an illustrator? Right now, right now. Yeah. When can I call myself a writer? When can I go?
Yeah, and it goes back to kind of that comment that I made about not needing the external validation or the external force. Of course, we need. It takes a village. We need partners, and we need. You can't do it alone. But ultimately, you're the one that has to decide. That this is who I am. No one's going to tell me who I am. And I'm going to make this happen. And I'm not going to wait around for someone to make it happen for me. Yeah. But that's hard. It took a really long time to get there. And like, there's no shortcut for time and experience. And it's like, I really don't like saying that because I have the experience. Yeah, it's easy for me to say it now, 50, gone, through the ringer multiple times. But but it's true. You have to just kind of stick with it.
Cool. So you are, where do you live?
We're in DC.
DC. Okay.
Yep. I've sort of taken this is my little man cave sound studio that I've been allowed to have downstairs. That it mixes with the extra storage. So
yeah,
it's just funny when you mentioned the different places like DuPont Circle and stuff. That's all the areas that I grew up going to. My dad working down in the district, and
how long were you in Maryland?
My high school, my childhood, all the way up to college. But then I came back and got my first illustration gigs, Washingtonian magazine.
Yeah.
Gave me my first little illustration, and they felt sorry for me, So I walk in there and they're like, we got an illustrator here. And then some guy comes out and he goes, I got just a thing for you, and I could tell like this doesn't happen. People, illustrators aren't visiting them that much.
Right.
They gave me this little tiny little spot in the back of the magazine about some chef in DC, and I don't even remember the restaurant, who got mad if the customers used salt because he seasoned his food, So I drew this huge bag of salt. I don't know, it was stupid. But, my first illustration.
That'd be funny if Michael hired you at one point.
I know. I would hire illustrators. I would do all these with paper and pencil, and I would just scan them, and I would work with Illustrator, my ArtJamz artists, because like half of them were doing illustration work, and I would just assign them. I would send them this scan of this crazy idea that I'd sketched out. I'm like, put this in InDesign or into Illustrator for me, and but that's really cool. Come back and see us in DC. Let me know when you're
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're on the East Coast every summer. We went to DC last year. My wife's family lives back there, so we go back and see them in the summer. So, but what's cool about ArtJamz too is what you shifted into, and this is the thing we always talk about. It's like we sell, so SVSLearn, we sell art instruction to artists, essentially people who don't have a ton of expendable income. But ArtJamz sells to businesses which have a budget for team building exercises, which I think is like, oh, duh, like that's obvious. And so, like Lee White, he couldn't be with us today, but because we like to keep it. We find if we have 4 people on a call, it's like too much. So we usually cycle between 2 of us. But anyway, he had a bunch of landscape illustrations, and he's like, oh my gosh, he just puts a little like flag in there, a golf tee, he's like, and now he has something that a dentist or a doctor can purchase and hang in their, in their office. I always thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to sort of go where the people with the budgets are, right?
Yeah,
right.
So, and corporations have that in the law firms and everything. Like, we did an event with KPMG, like 300 people, their offices across the U.S. and even internationally. We had 7 artists teaching concurrently virtually to like 300 people. It was crazy. Wow. And
that's awesome.
And I feel bad. Then we get the request for, I'd like to do like 13-year-old or my 8-year-old's birthday party. There's like 8 of us. I'm like, we're going to focus on the 300-person KPMG party right now, right? Like, sorry about that. Also, it's a lot easier to do a virtual party than to have, 15 9-year-olds running around hopped up on cupcake sugar.
I'm looking on your site, and I'm seeing the popsicle that the red, white, and blue popsicle. Mm-hmm. Is that like a typical when an artist leads someone through? They do that's such a cool idea, because I could really see those people being really happy with what they have at the end. Because it's simple,
it's striking,
it's doable, it's iconic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the process. I mean, we're creative, so we understand kind of the joy of the creative process when you do something and then you have this finished product and then you feel really proud of it. And like, that's why I love going back to like, why did I stick with ArtJamz? Because we make people happy. Like, we bring joy to the world. And I think that there was a higher purpose in that. And so many people have just left ArtJamz really happy. I mean, of course, there's always going to be a small percentage of people that didn't have a good time or whatever. But, like across the board, 98, 99% of the time, people just love that they've created. And we got them off their phone for 2 hours. And not only that, but then they had this experience where they've directly interacted with an artist. Like, artists are pretty solo beings. And most of the time, kind of the traditional art structures kind of it's almost like a zoo, you know. It's like the artist is in the cage, you know, don't feed them.
Right.
Don't touch them, don't put your fingers in there, but you can like watch them, or you can like look at their art. But at ArtJamz, they're directly working with them, and I think that's also really good for people. And again, like, I think it helps them appreciate art, it helps them appreciate artists, but it also is therapy. And we don't say that like in our marketing. It's like, take an ArtJamz class, it's therapy. Right. But when people are painting, they're happy when they're done, and it really creates joy and happiness. And that's, what's the value of that?
Right.
We would have, almost 10,000, between 10 to 12,000 people a year would paint at ArtJamz. So, after 10, 11 years, it's a lot, I'm like, wow, I have almost like 200,000 art babies out there in the universe.
Right. Wow. It's amazing.
So then that's what's cool now is like, it doesn't stop. Now I'm like, what, with NFTs, it's like, working on an app right now where people can just snap a picture of their artwork and send it to us. And then, we'll make an NFT out of it and put it in an NFT gallery. Because the joke was, with all of those people that had painted, they were like, I'm going to sell. Now I'm an artist. who wants to buy my art? But now you can, if you wanted to. And I think that's also why the establishment doesn't really like ArtJamz per se, because we're essentially, we're like pickup basketball for art, right?
Yeah, like it's a democratization of art, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Who doesn't like ArtJamz?
I think establishment,
like schools.
Yeah, it might be like it,
like people like where you're like this fine art. I shouldn't say that they don't, because we've actually had MoMA as a client. They did 3 virtual events with. The first time I got a request from MoMA, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Can you believe we're doing an event with MoMA? This is crazy. Yeah, it was like their marketing department or something. Yeah.
One thing too, I was going to say, we might save this recording as like the extras for our subscribers or something. But one thing that I thought was interesting, you started out like free form, and that's how SVS started out. We just said, here's a bunch of classes on all different kinds of things. You subscribe, you can learn anything you want. You just figure it out. And what we found were people would subscribe and they'd be like, there's too many choices here. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. Yeah. The real artists are like, sweet, I've been wanting to learn light and shadow. I'm going to take light and shadow. Okay, now I want to, and they could kind of chart their own course. But like your average person needs framework. And so that's why we started making like a guided foundation course, 20 classes. You take them in this order, one right after the other. And that's what people like just respond to so much better. So
no, totally. And you have to kind of like processize the business, right? And get the flywheel, so to speak, working, right? Like the replicable process and channel and pipe. But there's something really powerful about the freestyle when there's a blank canvas in front of you and it's totally up to you to do it. It's frightening, especially for people that haven't, they'd be like, I haven't painted since kindergarten. What am I going to do? And I said, I don't know. I mean, like the Mona Lisa, there's a painting underneath the Mona Lisa. Even Michelangelo was like, this is no good. I can't believe this is no good. I paint over it. It's really bad Italian accent. Sorry if this is in the extras. But, and then I joke. I'm like, my gut tells me that the painting underneath the Mona Lisa was probably pretty good. I don't know, right? Like it was probably pretty good. But what started happening, this is so interesting. Totally just a byproduct that I'd never expected, but what I found really interesting is that when you let people paint whatever they want and they're not artists, they go somewhere inside, something comes out. Like it really goes into that subconscious level. And it's almost like I got to the point where it was like reading a palm, where you could look at these paintings and they didn't know it, right? I understand as an artist, I've been through this where it's like a lot of the art I've created, it's like, wow, there's some really interesting messaging. Like I tapped into something, some interesting place, right? They think that they're painting a tree. with a girl on a swing with 3 birds flying out of the tree, right? I would look at that and I would say, you know, do you have, do you have a one brother or sister? You know, is there 4 people in your family? I'm like, yeah. Wow. How'd you know that? I said, well, you're the girl on the swing, and the 3 birds flying away are your family members. And I can see that the 3 birds are different sizes, right? So the largest, the mama bird and the dad, bird. And then, do you have a younger sibling? Yes. Right. Are you, just these types of things, or if someone's painting's like really messy or confusing, I said, are you going through a transition right now, or whatever? And they'd be like, yeah, how do you know? I was like, well, look at your painting, it's a total mess. Right. Or or whatever. Yeah. And they'd be like, wow, I didn't realize that. And like over and over and over again, to the point where I stopped doing it, where it got like I was just nailing it too much, and it was like freaking people out. But it, and I don't know what that is. And if you're a spiritual person, then you can kind of attach your spirituality to sort of what is that channel that creativity opens. It's not up to me to figure out. No one can figure that out, right? Because it's not quantitative, but it's there, and it's really interesting. And that's a really cool byproduct just for me as the owner, and as kind of like a person interested in the world and personality and how art is, just seeing that over and over again. And again, these are people that haven't created for a real long time. So this suppression and all these things that are in them, it's almost like dreaming, right? The art enables that to come out. And I think it's really super and important in a way. Yeah. But if we're able to kind of hide it as like a corporate team building event, fine, that's great. But I know in my heart of hearts that this person is going away having kind of cleansed something or been able to work through something. It's really fascinating, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
How many of your the companies that do ArtJamz do it again? Is that a thing? Do they do it again, or?
Yeah, we have a lot of repeat customers, and those are important. It's mostly the consultants, and the Booz Allen Hamiltons and the KPMGs and the Accentures and the EY. Or we've worked with Microsoft, Facebook/Meta, because they have different departments. So.
So one department get jealous, like they got to make paintings.
Yeah, why do they have those cool paintings in their cubicle? But now there's no cubicle, so we've lost a lot of that word of mouth. But and that's why we focus on those sort of the repeat offenders, as we call them.
Yeah, repeat offenders.
Because you want that, right? You want those institutional clients and the repeat customers. It's a lot easier. Like with this property developer, it's a lot better to have a really good relationship with one property developer that has, 60 properties around the U.S. And just try to continue to work with them, than try and go to, and get 60 different clients. Right.
Yeah.
So, and those are things that you just learn as an entrepreneur over the years, and I think the pandemic also really created like essentialism in my mind, like how to just focus and strip away, mainly because I do have an 8-year-old, and we're at home, and with the school, and there was no school, and it was like I had maybe 2 hours of like 2 to 3 hours a day of actual work time, if that, during the pandemic. So I'm like, how do you just focus like a laser beam? And then now it's probably similar with you guys as we're like opening back up, thank goodness, and hopefully we can kind of get past all of this. Now it's like all the gates are opening again. I'm like kind of crazy busy and stuff. And like, how do you still focus and keep that essential? Like, what's essential? What is essential? It's so key. And as creatives sometimes, and business owners, we just do too much. Because you can, and you want to, and just like saying like, no, stop, focus.